everybody. So I will let you take a seat in the front row because you have microphones. You can ask questions. So I would like to welcome for this press conference on building a FIFA worthy of the world's game with His Excellency Prince Ali Al Hussein, candidate to the presidency of FIFA. I would welcome you here at the Swiss Press Club, Prince Ali. It's a pleasure to have you here for the presentation and also not the launching of your campaign because you are traveling all around the world for that, but to be here for first time in Switzerland, and I hope all the best for your campaign. As I told you, it brings luck to be here when a candidate.
Well, that's a great thing.
So I would ask you to sign our golden book, and I will give you the floor. Thanks a lot, and we can see it, and I will. Yeah.
Good morning. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining me at the Geneva Press Club today, and thank you to Director Matin for his warm welcome. As he said, speaking here has been a lucky omen for many other candidates, so let's hope the same applies on February 26th. It's a pleasure to be here at this historic club that has received so many distinguished visitors over the years at such an important time for the game that I care about so deeply. We are 16 days away from an election that I believe will be FIFA's last chance to demonstrate that it is prepared to turn its back on the shame and turmoil of the past and is ready to turn a new page. I have spent the past year traveling the world as a FIFA presidential candidate, motivated by the belief that despite all its problems, the organization is capable of reforming itself and delivering a governing body worthy of the world's most popular sport. What I have learned on my travels is that there are football people all over the world who want to handle our game in the right way, and who are tired of the old way of doing things. Listening to their ideas and aspirations helped formulate my manifesto, which was released last month. Today, I am presenting the practical plan for implementing my vision. It is my work plan for my first year in office. It contains concrete steps, no gimmicks, no empty slogans, just a realistic roadmap that will lead FIFA to a better place where it can earn the trust of fans, players, and football lovers everywhere. A place where we will all be enjoying headlines about football as a sport, not as an endless source of scandal. There are 5 candidates in this election, but there is one issue that is more important than who the winner is. It is getting back to football. The next president of FIFA will shoulder a huge responsibility. After so much turmoil, I humbly believe that I could make a real and genuine contribution as the next FIFA president. I am a free and independent candidate, beholden to no one. I will respect FIFA's reforms in both letter and spirit, and never seek to manipulate loopholes in the statutes for personal gains. I will seek support from the 209 members of FIFA by listening to them, sharing my ideas, and building consensus, relying on the power of ideas rather than intimidation or coercion. And I will not take decisions that have not withstood the correct checks and balances of an active executive body, which is knowledgeable, transparent, and fully representative of our community. Governments, civil society, sponsors, and the private sector, fans and players, and you, the media, have all called for a FIFA that proves in its actions that it embraces important values. Openness, transparency, ethical conduct, non-discrimination of any kind, no acceptance of mismanagement, corruption, self-interest, racism, sexism, human rights violations. These are the values that must be achieved. Only then there will be consensus that FIFA operates as a world-class sports governing body. FIFA cannot turn its back on those values and retain any hope of surviving. This will require a real change in the organization's culture, a change that comes from within and soon becomes clearly visible from the outside. If we don't do that, the outside forces that have already affected FIFA will only grow stronger. Governments will step up their investigations, more sponsors will walk away, and more revenue will be lost. The world is cleaning FIFA up, whether FIFA likes it or not. FIFA can limit the negative consequences by moving forward with the process of real cultural change. You have heard the word reform from all the candidates in this race, and from many other elements and respected people, such as Professor Mark Pyth, whose research was commissioned by FIFA, but then ignored. Good ideas have been obstructed most often by a minority of individuals for personal gain, for fear that they will lose their own power. It is time we put good ideas into practice. My manifesto promises to deliver simple 21st century governance structures and practices that ensure transparency, high ethical standards, and fair, democratic, and accountable leadership. Please allow me to touch on some of the essential elements for you before I take your questions. To begin with, I will propose a limit of 2 4-year consecutive terms for the FIFA President and members of the Executive Committee or FIFA Council. Transparency is absolutely essential, and it will include publishing accurate minutes of Executive Committee meetings and disclosure of top salaries. One of the first things I intend to do is contact both the Swiss and US Attorney Generals to offer FIFA's cooperation with the goal of seeking a swift conclusion to their investigations. It is also a top priority to release the Garcia report into the 2018 and 2022 World Cup votes in a responsible manner. FIFA must win back the world's trust in order to continue to function, and that trust is conditional. It depends significantly on allowing independent oversight of the reform process. Some may view this as outside interference. I see it as a genuine mechanism for guidance, mediation, and a resource that the FAs could use as an unbiased bridge to their executive committee or council. I will bring an oversight team into FIFA. I envisage this team made up of 5 people who are from outside football and whose integrity is flawless. I see them as widely representative as possible with professional specialities. They will establish working groups made up of the football associations to bring forward ideas to the Congress. Cultural change and true reform will only be achieved in a collaborative, consultative, interactive process with FIFA member associations and other stakeholders. I will embrace the football community. Players, coaches, clubs, and professional leagues should feel that they are and can work with FIFA. I want to see a robust discussion and debate involving all of our FAs. That will require an extraordinary calendar year, that includes 4 executive committee meetings and an additional FIFA Congress in December. And in light of that, when we talk about bringing it to the 21st century, we do need to introduce technology into the equation. The process will start with working groups focused on key issues. The working groups will draw on the best ideas from all existing reform plans and recommendations, examine the impact of any changes that may be approved by the Congress on February 26, and deliver the recommendations at the FIFA Congress in Mexico City in May. Their presentations to the May Congress will mark the start of a consultation period that will give all interested parties a chance to register their opinions, to encourage input, and FIFA will establish a virtual Congress discussion forum or an online comment system. Based on this feedback, the steering committees will refine their recommendations and submit them to the member associations with ample time for review before an additional December Congress. Most importantly, the Congress will be asked to vote on the recommendations individually, not as a package. Each reform should be evaluated on its own merit. This process is admittedly a little cumbersome, but that is democracy, and it's worth the effort to get it right. Sustainable change in any organization has to come from within and be built on consensus. No real reform is possible without buy-in within the organization. It can never be forcibly imposed. I will be a hands-on president, and I mean to do my part every day to help the football associations and FIFA staff in every way I can, and to work with them as a team. I will not interfere or micromanage, but I will accept the responsibility for FIFA's actions and always remain accountable to member associations and the outside world. There are so many good people in FIFA, but many feel fear, and often with good reason. Let me tell you what happens when you don't go with the recognized powers in FIFA. Development projects mysteriously stall. Tournament hosting bids are suddenly compromised or withdrawn. National teams start to mysteriously face less favorable fixtures and even referees. All of these are effective ways to punish member associations that fail to demonstrate political loyalty. The 209 members know that FIFA is in crisis. This election on February 26 will determine whether a small group of powerful individuals will hold FIFA hostage. Ladies and gentlemen, Geneva is the right place to talk about these issues. Not only is this city at the heart of Europe a major center of international sport, it is also a symbol of transparency, charity, and humanitarian principles. The reason why I'm standing for this election is simple. I love football, and I want to see football run the right way. Change will only come to FIFA if people who desire change come together to make it happen. Europe is widely admired for its values, and rightfully so. But Europe cannot bring change to FIFA alone. Less than a year ago, many European FAs joined with me to challenge an incumbent president. With Europe's help again, we can finish the job. The election of the next FIFA president should not be decided by regionalism. It should be determined by which candidate has the credibility, commitment, and the right values to unite FIFA and bridge cultural change to this diverse global organization. I believe I am that candidate. Now, I'll be very happy to take your questions, but before so, I would also like to raise that somebody I respect very much, and the president of a football association is here with us today as well, President Musa Beliti of Liberia.
Yeah, please.
Thank you.
thank you very much for this statement, very strong statement, and I think it was really impressive to hear you. I will now give the floor to the journalist. Ah, yes, please, Lisa. Lisa, Lisa, sorry, Lisa Schlein, yeah.
Yes, good morning. Lisa Schlein, Voice of America. I've got a couple of questions. You've been associated with FIFA in various ways for years now. During all those years, did you ever get a whiff of corruption, of things not going the way they should go? Do you feel bad that perhaps you didn't react to what has now turned into a full-blown scandal? And then I was wondering how you rate the other candidates. Do you think you are the only candidate that is capable of reforming FIFA as it should be reformed, or do you think that the others would work up to the mark in that position? And if reform doesn't occur, what is the future of FIFA? Does it implode or explode?
Thank you. Well, I was elected by my confederation in 2011 to be the vice president representing Asia, specifically because in Asia we had so many challenges at the time, and they wanted somebody from a football association who could get into FIFA and really work on cleaning up the system. Having said that, I came in literally when things started to happen. There was a little bit of a joke by some members at the time saying everything was fine till you arrived. And I was always considered a rebel in that respect. I served there 4 years in the executive committee. I did my best throughout the time to execute change. I was the first, for example, to immediately call for the Garcia report to be made published, to support reform, to try and really introduce proper development for football associations around the world. Because I come from a developing football association myself, and I believe that the system was not correct. It was drip-fed, and it led football associations to be totally reliant on FIFA as an organization. I tried very much with some other colleagues, to be honest, within the executive committee to execute real changes, real reform, and to have a real open culture in the organization. And coming up to, after those 4 years, I recognized that the only way to do it, the only way, was to run for the presidency of the organization. I was the only one, and probably in the history of FIFA, who said that I can no longer remain on the executive committee under the circumstances that they are in right now. And I took that decision. I was also the only one to really challenge an incumbent president, even when everybody said that it was absolutely impossible to win at the time. And I stick by that. And I think that football associations around the world recognize that. They recognize what I stand for in terms of development, in terms of social responsibility, in terms of women's rights as well in football, which needs to be pushed a lot more. And that's why I believe I'm the best candidate to do this. I have my professional background as well, whether it comes from working in crisis management, which might not be a bad thing at this stage in time for FIFA. And therefore I'm determined to finish off what has been started. I believe I'm the only one who has not changed positions. I didn't one day support a candidate and then suddenly the other day become a reformer overnight. And I think that stability, common sense, and a strong will are what is necessary for the FIFA leadership in this critical time. And I believe that I'm the right person to do it.
I asked you about the other candidates, and I'm wondering whether you think that reform will not occur if another person becomes the president of FIFA, and if that happens and FIFA does not reform, what is its future?
The fact of the matter is I choose to run my own campaign. I'm somebody who's there to unite the world. I'm also not a candidate who tries to use, for example, executive committees or confederations to push voters in a certain way. I think that one must reach out to every football association. They are the decision makers, and it is their future. And that's what differentiates me, I think, from other candidates. And at the same time, I don't want to get into criticizing other candidates. They have their own issues to deal with. But I do believe that in terms of integrity, responsibility, and a proven track record, that certainly I'm the best candidate to be FIFA president at this time.
Thank you. Yes.
Hi, my name is Ben Simon. I work for AFP. It seems as though, without mentioning other candidates, you've taken what I would consider to be a few shots at some of the other names in the race. You mentioned that there needs to be an absolutely clean record on human rights. Do you think that Sheikh Salman is disqualified because of his ties to human rights abuses in Bahrain? You mentioned that candidates shouldn't use confederations to push people to vote a certain way. Is that what you think happened, for example, at CAF with the Sheikh? Is that what you think is happening with UEFA with Mr. Infantino? I understand you don't want to name other people in the race, but you are making various references to other events which have occurred, so why don't you be specific? What are the elements of your rivals' campaigns which you see as particularly disturbing?
Sorry. Seems to be. No, look, again, this is an election for 209 members, and each football association has the right to choose their candidate. It's not a confederation election. It is a FIFA presidential election. And if other candidates do choose to work on regions and try to divide up the world, then yes, I think that's wrong. I believe that FIFA needs a candidate who is for the entire world, whether it's from the largest country to the smallest one in terms of their abilities and capabilities. So again, that's the reality. In terms of human rights, again, that goes back to the electoral committee, and in part of that is a criteria for a president of FIFA. What I will say, though, I'm not going to criticize any other candidate except to say the reality, which is if any allegations that were made about any candidate with this regard in terms of human rights, whether true or not, the simple basic fact of the matter is that that person did not protect or stick up for his players at that time.
Thank you.
Good morning, Brian Homer from Reuters. You said that you made a reference to national teams suddenly facing less favourable fixtures or referees, which is quite a startling comment because it would seem to suggest that FIFA's own competitions are affected, are in some way manipulated. Could you enlarge on that a little bit and say how this is done, and maybe give the odd example? Has this, for example, affected World Cup qualifiers? Was the fact that Jordan had to play Uruguay a very tough match connected to this?
Maybe I would invite President Beliti to come and, if you don't mind, to come and join us on stage. But no, definitely that was not the case with our game with Uruguay. But it has happened with a lot of football associations, and it is something that you should ask them about. I think that it is common within national associations to face pressure. And in particular when it comes to development funding. And whether it's FIFA or on a confederation level, yes, it does exist, that sort of problem. I don't know, maybe Musa,
Yes,
you want
please.
to elaborate a little bit on...
You mean on favorability?
Yeah.
Well, I think you said all, Mr. President. The thing is, almost, especially in third world countries, associations are very fragile, and just the mere thought that you are not in line with the authority that be sends a very tough signal to people that will want to distract you, people. It's a real, like when I opposed President Blatter in 2011, and the point I was making was that it was really time for him to leave. 2 weeks later, I got a call that FIFA was coming to Liberia to audit me. Now the point is, I don't know whether it was related to my stance or it was a routine audit, but it was quite suspicious. Yeah, after I have stood up against the president of FIFA, then here comes a team of auditors from FIFA that we need to come and audit your book. I mean, for the record, they did audit us, and it was proven that we run our association very transparently.
Thank you. So, yes, please.
Hello, наша газета Татьяна Хирко, Geneva. Do you think that Russia and Qatar should keep their World Cups despite all the allegations?
I think that for me, I'm focused on the future. And what is most important is to see what happened with past World Cups. In particular, that's why it's crucial to get the Garcia report published. I was an executive committee member. I have not seen it and was not allowed to see it myself. And the important thing is that we really have a process where there is confidence in a bidding process in the future. Again, I mean, if you're going to look at World Cups, we're now hearing stories about past World Cups going back to South Africa, to Germany, to what have you. But for me, the important thing is to make sure that World Cups are conducted properly in terms of a bidding process, that there are strict rules and regulations governing it, and that the recommendation that goes out from the team that looks at different venues is the main criteria for selecting a nation to be able to host the World Cup. But that's what I want to do, is to have a real proper review system on the bidding process. We need to look also at other organizations, how they've done it before, including the International Olympic Committee, for example. And they changed their system, obviously, after scandals such as Salt Lake City. But it has to be a real commitment to review the process. And that also includes the idea of enlarging the World Cup out of principle and technically on the field. I see the potential to do it. But again, we have to do it responsibly. It's not something that is simply for election purposes or to earn support, but to really bring in all the stakeholders, including clubs, including leagues, and hear their opinion, including host nations, whether it is possible also to enlarge the World Cups. But again, I think at this stage in time, before I really make any comments, I would like to see the Garcia report published. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Graham Dunbar from the Associated Press. A question for both of you, but particularly for Prince Ali first. What is your sense of what is happening in Africa at the moment? Because there was an executive committee endorsement of Sheikh Salman last week that the CAF leadership refused to explain how and why they came to that decision. And we have this sort of fiasco about South Sudan where, yes, they're supporting Gianni Infantino. CAF says they're not. The South Sudan Federation president refuses to confirm that CAF news release, which was a bit creepy in the sort of language, is actually accurate. And Mr. Bilder, you have talked to many members who say they're not going to follow the CAF executive's directive. What is happening there? And do you think African members have even got the message that FIFA is saying there is going to be a cultural change and all these reforms are going to go down to their members? It doesn't seem that message is getting through.
Well, look, just to start with, and with respect to everybody, there is a lot of confusion in terms of the process of elections. I mean, if we look back to the Electoral Committee and their regulations, nobody is allowed to use their organization for election purposes. That was clear within the rules the electoral committee, and with respect also to the CAF president, he did resign from his role a few weeks before the announcement came out, and temporarily, because he is the acting president of FIFA. So there's a lot of confusion going on as to why he's suddenly back as CAF president and making decisions on behalf of a continent. But in reality, where I'm concerned and is that every national association is not pressured to make a decision. And again, that comes back to the issue of intimidation. And maybe I'll leave it to the president to explain more.
Well, first, I think, again, it comes to fairness. We maybe it's time for us to call on FIFA again. We need to begin to examine these executive committee endorsement as to whether it's not actually intimidation or interference. Because at the end of the day, if you are the governing body of a confederation with so much authority and you have no right to vote, why should you be making, these position, and why should you be clarifying on behalf of confederations? If Egypt endorses or does not endorse, CAF should not be the one to be clarifying whether or not Egypt has made an endorsement. If South Sudan makes a statement, I think CAF should not be the one. And as a member of FIFA, we should begin to find out whether this positioning by CAF is not an interference into the electoral process. It is true that the executive committee has its right to decide as an executive committee. And maybe you, the press, need to ask them in what capacity did they make the endorsement, because they have the right to endorse whoever they want to, but since they do not have the vote, they have no right to make a decision on my behalf or on behalf of my colleagues, because we're fully aware of what is going on in FIFA. We know what needs to happen. I mean, I feel it every day. I know what I go through as an association. I know my needs, and I know who can give it to me. Our endorsement of Ali is beyond what you think it is. One, he feels and understands what we go through as an association president. And we may make a choice on the 26th of February. There will be two changes. Either we can change the system or we can change the name. And if we choose any candidate other than Ali, we'll be making changes only in name. Because the point is, we need to look at the records of those who are claiming for changes now. What were their position in just last year? Where were they? Are we not seeing the return of the old order in these people? Can't we try to send those messages? Because for me, as an association president, I stood by a man who I believe was bold enough when Blatter was in an invincible position, when it was almost impossible to make a call to stand against Blatter. A person who takes the risks at that time to say, I'm going for change, I'm standing against this person. Who should we give the opportunity to change FIFA? Those who did not even recognize the change or the need for it, or the person who has taken the risk to lead that change. It is two simple decisions that we have to make. And to conclude with your question, I can tell you that Africa does not and will not vote as the executive committee has announced. If that was the case, why didn't they call us in a confederation meeting so that we all make public pronouncement? Countries are making their decision. I'm speaking to them. We discuss every day. We know what we're going through. We know our difficulties. We know the 6 years I've been president of my association, I've never been able to do 3 goal projects, and this is something that is in our budget for every year, and then we have no access to it. The bureaucracy is too high. The patronage is there. We need to change that. And there's just one person who can change it. And my colleagues in Africa, we understand it. We understand. And again, for Europe, we have to be fair. Europe has been the champion for change and the fight against Blatter. But Europe needs to continue that, to take a vote for any one of the other candidates who did not stand with you when you were calling for change. I would be surprised, because there was only one person that stood with Europe to say we must change FIFA, and that person is Ali. Is Europe going to change football, or is Europe going for itself? I believe that Europe will go to change football, and that their real partner in most difficult times was him. When every association turned their back on Europe, when Europe was standing alone in the line of fire, fighting Blatter, there was one person that stood with them. That person is Ali. And I think Europe should take the moral high ground and follow him to the end.
Thank you, Mr. President, for that precisions. Other questions? Yes, Gorgi.
Gorgui Ndoye, Continent Premier, Soleil de Dakar, Senegal. One or two questions. First of all, do you think that Senegal will back Mr. Ali? I saw in your files a picture with the president, Mr. Senghor, with you. I don't know if you already have spoken to him or not. The second question is regarding ethics in football. I think that my colleagues has raised some question, but as an African and black African, I would like to know if Mr. Ali will fight against racism in football. Thank you.
Thank you very much. First of all, I'm the only candidate who is not asking for public declarations. And if they come because people do want to stand up and make those decisions. For myself, I am definitely seeking the support of everyone, including Senegal, for sure. And I've talked, obviously, with the president of the Football Association. I had the honor of meeting the president of the country, and that is a courtesy call. As you know, I mean, FIFA is a big organization that needs to also respect and talk to governments and present ideas. But at the end of the day, it will be the decision of the Football Association. And I will be seeking Senegal as well as all countries' votes in that respect. As for Africa and for anti-racism and anti-discrimination, yes, of course I will be fighting for that. And in all shapes and forms. One of the things that is an issue in football is that we have slogans, and we see them up in matches and so on, but that's not enough. We have to go into communities, we have to go into clubs, and we have to really have a proper program to tackle discrimination. That's the only way to do it, and no longer just about slogans. For myself, for sure, I come from a family that is very diverse. My wife is Algerian, so my kids claim, African descent, and my father-in-law has been one of the champions of fighting discrimination and racism throughout his career. But we also have to look at tackling gender imbalances as well within FIFA and within football, and not just within the sport, but also in terms of organizations as well.
Thank you. Est-ce qu'il y a d'autres?
Do you want to see all 5 candidates go to election day to make their presentations for the full range of views to be heard? Do you think that serves FIFA's interests and process better than unity or consensus ahead of the 26th?
If this is to be a democratic election, it should be based on that. I don't think that deals should be made, and even if they are, that's something that other candidates have to respond to. I think the focus of the world is on who the next president of FIFA will be. And that is crucially the most important issue. As for a debate, I believe that in other organizations, they usually organize that prior to an election, the day before, in fact. And I've seen that in different sporting organizations, and that would be the ideal way of doing it. But I have also recognized that there are candidates who are unwilling to even give the respect to our Congress to have an open debate in front of them.
Please. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Gabriela Sotomayor from Mexican News Agency. I would like to know about your relation with Latin America. After that night in the hotel, that scandal, Latin American members of FIFA were there, and there was, the story. So associations are not in the best shape. So what is your relation with them? Are you campaigning with them? Do you think that they will support you? Mexico, for example? Thanks.
Thank you very much. I've been in contact with and visited obviously in South America and in CONCACAF and in CONMEBOL, if we can put it that way. I think they're under an extreme amount of pressure right now with all that has happened, and I see that there is a lot of new dynamic leadership there. I have full faith that they want to make a change within not only their regional organizations, but in FIFA as well. And obviously, I would be there to support them along this process. I was, quite frankly, really disturbed when, recently and after these changes were made, and for example, in South America, a new president was elected. And I was there in Paraguay, and whose words really echoed exactly my own feelings, to see that after that FIFA cut off development funding both to CONCACAF and to CONMEBOL. And if there is a problem with confederations as a body, the idea of punishing individual national associations who might not have had anything to do with scandals is absolutely wrong. And I'm against collective punishment in any way. When people are in difficult times, that's when FIFA needs to step in and help them get back into a healthy process. And as president, that's exactly what I intend to do from day one.
Yes, sorry, but I want to go back to the question I asked originally that I didn't get an answer to. And that is, if the necessary reforms are not instituted, what is the future outlook for FIFA? Is it an organization that will simply implode? And then I have a question for Mr. Billett, if I may.
There is a call around the world to change the organization, and that's why I've said that this really is our last chance to get things right. It's not just simply a matter of making proposals for reform, but you have to have a president who has the political will to implement those reforms, and that's what I stand for. So yes, if things go in maybe in a different direction, I am very concerned that there will be much more of a call to really have a new organization or to change FIFA completely. And for me, I believe in what FIFA can do, and I'm trying really along with colleagues to save the organization and to bring it back on the right track, because it is an umbrella for all. So definitely February will be a crucial date, probably the most crucial date in the history of the governance of the sport.
There's no chance to postpone. No, it will be decided on January 26th. No chance to be postponed again, the decision.
Well, I think, frankly, we've wasted a year already. we need to get back in shape and get back to serving the sport.
I have a question for Mr. Billet, please. Okay. I'm not asking you to speak for all of Africa, but in the sense I am. Do you think that African countries will be active participants in the new reform process? Africa did benefit a lot from patronage from Sepp Blatter. And do you think that many countries might feel beholden to whoever the new director of the organization is, or can they act independently?
Well, you know, your last question did catch my attention, that Africa did benefit a lot, because I don't see those benefits. You know, I you know, to be seen with me does not necessarily mean that you are, you know, if you do an analysis of all of the continents, all of the confederation, Africa is still the least. So after 18 years of a presidency, if a continent is not making step towards, you know, vibrancy, then I don't want to describe that as benefit. What happened, and then what we have had enough of is patronage. And yes, I think every African country, all 54 of us, will vote. We will be active. We are active. We are speaking to each other. And we are very, very determined not to make the mistake that will send this organization back to where it came from and make it even more difficult to recover from that position. So yes, we are active. Like I've said, I've spoken to even more or since I publicly announced my support to Ali, and that they know what he stands for, they know what he wants to do, and there are other, you know, things that they would like to see happen that they believe that he's doing. So the announcement by CAF, I would like to see one country making support of that, then I will take it with a pinch of salt. As of now, an executive committee has made a decision. Not a single member of that executive committee will vote on the 26th, and not a single member of those who will vote have made a public statement like I have made. Doesn't that send a signal to all of us?
Could I briefly also touch on what the President was saying as well? And sure, there has been development before. I served for 2 years on the development committee at FIFA before I was removed. But I did see that, fine, there was support going to national associations, but not in a way that it could have been done. And it could have been done much better. One of the issues I had was the costs coming out of the development committee from things like travel expenses for FIFA staff, including the president, to open projects, was actually coming from the development budget. So that wasn't actually put into development itself. I think there's a drip feed system, and it's also rather political. In terms of how one gets access to development funds. And that all has to change. We have to be open, we have to be transparent, and we have to deal with nations on a case-by-case basis. You cannot have a one-system-fits-all package. And we have to focus on those that need it most. And in terms of getting the basics, whether it's infrastructure, kits, and so on. And my plan, and I've discussed this with the President as well, is that we need to give self-sufficiency to national associations. We need to promote them in all ways, including their leagues, including their clubs, so that they can be self-sustainable and not totally dependent. And I think that's again what the President was referring to in terms of patronage. No, they want to stand on their own 2 feet, and that's what I want to deliver to them. And coming from a national association myself, I understand that. And we have to recognize the fact that it is our national associations that own FIFA, and not the other way around. So with respect to all that has been done in the past, there is so much more that we can do in the future. Thank you.
Last question, if there is one. If no, I think Okay, the last one for you.
Do you think one of the FIFA statutes says that national governments must not interfere in football associations, no matter how corrupt football associations are? Do you think in this day and age that is realistic? And in general, is it realistic to keep sport and politics completely separate, or should FIFA accept that governments are going to have to more and more get involved?
Well, that's an issue that differs, to be honest, across the world. In some cases, governments have gotten involved because of serious issues within their football associations. In other cases, there has been interference. But again, you have to deal with it on a case-by-case basis. For myself, I do believe also that we have to have real regional staff in FIFA. Right now, I mean, Zurich is sort of a little bit separate than maybe the rest of the world. We need to know what's going on the ground and have that local knowledge as well. And we have to protect our national associations. But there are a lot of things that need to be changed, including, there is this concept within FIFA that when they see something going wrong, they create a normalization committee, for example, which is really rather a scary issue, where they select people who will run the organization or run the FA at a certain period of time. I've personally experienced where normalization committees, for example, their mandate has been extended depending on elections, and they are personally put from FIFA or selected from that. So all this kind of issues need to be changed, and we have to respect our football associations. If you have a problem, then you guarantee that there is an election straight away. So again, there is obviously we have to protect our football association and their rights, but we also have to support RFAs and their rights as well, in terms of wanting to progress. And definitely, governments are key right now, and we've seen that. And to have a situation where it took the Swiss and U.S. Attorney Generals to interfere, obviously it's a shame that we have reached that stage where we're at.
So thank you very much, Prince Salim. Thank you very much, President, for your statements. I think it was quite interesting to hear you. I know you have a plane to take to Miami. So
all right. Well, thank you all very, very much.
On. Yes.
Right. Thank you.
Now we have special
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
And we go at